Who would have guessed it? Tax avoidance is now illegal. Goodness me. Hello, my name's Gordon Silver. I'm a multi-award winning chartered accountant. I'm the international best-selling author of Profit Propeller and the creator of the Profit Multiplier program. I just saw on Sky News last night, on one of the scripts they go by, that the Inland Revenue are looking to, through the government of course, are looking to introduce legislation or just a practice to collect double the amount of tax saved by tax avoidance measures by banks and other institutions, maybe even businesses like yours and mine. So what's the big deal? I mean, of course that makes sense, doesn't it? If if a big banker is not paying his tax, that would seem to be the right thing to do. If he's avoiding it, yeah, charge him. It's all fair for them, right? It's all good if somebody else is paying the tax. But let me explain the problem here. Tax evasion has always been illegal. That is doing things against the law to save tax. For example, you've probably come across, like I have, some tradespeople who come to do some work and they give you a cash price which is lower than their proper price because their idea is that they don't have to pay tax on it, or VAT on it, or PA. There's a whole load of taxes. That is blatantly illegal. And I even had one plumber come to my door probably 10 years ago now, and he actually said, well, if you pay cash, I don't have to charge you VAT. That's the law. Well, you and I both know that that is a completely twisted idea of what the law is, and it is, of course, never in a million years. So tax evasion has always been illegal, never been a problem. Tax avoidance, though, has always been legal. And if you do things by the law, then you're fine, you're in the right place. So what's now happened as a result of a whole load of rhetoric and emotion, and effectively the Inland Revenues and the government's failure to produce legislation that is right and when applied will collect the right amount of tax. Because of that failure, they want to make tax avoidance illegal. Now, I don't really have a problem necessarily as long as we all know where it starts and where it stops. The problem is we don't know where it starts and where it stops. So does it stop with a banker who's saving £1 million, or does it go further to businesses like yours and mine? Let's take a case study. So you get a banker who, through using a bullion scheme, buying gold and giving them the gold and doing a scheme like that, they may save £1 million in tax. Do we think that it's fair for them not only to pay that £1 million in tax, but to pay a penalty for even having a go at using it? Because of course it was legal, it wasn't against the law, but of course morally we've now come to the decision that it's not legal. It's a moral decision rather than a legal decision. So there's our first problem. So let's assume that you answered, yeah, it's fair for them to pay £2 million because they saved £1 million as a punishment for avoiding tax. Okay. Maybe you answered no. So if you answered no, then you're probably going to see my point a bit easier. But if you answered yes, let's take it to the other extreme for businesses like yours and mine. One of the things I do in my business is I look to claim the expenses I believe I'm allowed to run my business. So for example, if I go and meet a client in central London, one of our offices, our satellite offices there, I may take the client out for a coffee. And we may have a coffee and a sandwich, okay? I don't have a meeting room in that office. We just go out and we have a sandwich, we have a chat about business, and I would claim that expense. And that expense is reducing my tax bill because it's an expense. Now, that is effectively avoiding tax, isn't it? Let me give you another example. That one seems a bit stretched. I work from home because I choose to. That's how I've organized my life and my business. We run a very virtual office, as you probably know, and my mobile phone happens to be in the company's name, so that's all fine. But many of my clients would have a mobile phone in their own name, and they would have to log their calls to decide how much of their phone bill should be claimed by the company or not, because unless the phone is in the company name, you can't claim it. So they've got to keep a detailed list of the phone calls. Now, by doing that, they are reducing their tax bill. Is that avoidance? Because it is avoiding tax, isn't it? They could not claim for it because it's not in the company's name, true and fair, but they are allowed under the rules to avoid tax by calculating the right amount of the phone bills and putting that through to reduce their tax bills, to avoid tax. So wherein does this avoidance start and where does it stop? There are so many examples of this, and we have to be very, very aware now that when we look to save tax, we are up for grabs because the revenue have changed the law in arrears. So, what we've done something that, for example, could have been within the law in 2010, for example, and in 2016 they could change the law and says what you did in 2010 is now illegal, so we're going to charge you tax back at 2010. 10 years ago, that would be preposterous. That would not even be in anyone's idea of what could possibly happen, regardless of anyone's lifetime, let alone within 10 years. And here we are. So my message to you is, do you avoid tax? Do you claim expenses that reduce your tax bill? Do you consider yourself to be a tax avoider? And do you consider that you should be paying the tax and the penalty of double the tax because you avoided tax by doing these measures? Do you believe you should do that? How about if you buy an electric car rather than a diesel or a petrol car to save tax? You've avoided tax. Are they going to go, well, actually, you did it to avoid tax. We want to charge you double the tax you saved. Where does it stop? I am absolutely fed up with the lack of ability of politicians and legislators to get the legislation right, to collect the right amount of tax. So instead they create this huge grey cloud over all of us, and we have no idea where the line is drawn. I have to mention that because when you come to me for tax advice, the first thing I'm going to be telling you is, do you realize that tax advice now is up for grabs in 5 years' time? Are you aware of that? And you would probably have to tell me, yes, I'm aware of that, and we'll take it on advisement on that basis. I really don't know. So I haven't got an answer on this because it's just so frustrating and it's such a big problem, and no politician is willing to stand up to the tax man. Everyone is scared of the fallout if they side with the taxpayer who wants to save some tax legitimately. Albeit it may be, some people may consider that avoidance. I don't know. So how much tax avoidance do you have in your accounts on your personal tax? Do you think it's fair? What are you going to do about it? How will you vote? Is there a party that you can see that would take your vote to stand up for you? I'm not convinced there is right now. It's a pretty poor situation. Anyway, we'll do the best we can, and until we get a chance to speak, take care of yourself. Sorry about my rant. Had to get it off my chest. Goodbye.